Hello, welcome back to Let's Play Buried in Time. So today is going to be the lore dump episode. It'll probably be long, and it will be full of a lot of talking and reading. So if you do not like any of those things, I recommend you skip it. But next episode should be, unless this ends up turning into like a two-parter, next episode we should actually be getting to the meat of the game. And we got this little, I guess, Easter egg or joke here. Remote control for our environment system. Object analysis, remote control. This is the remote control for the high-res Environ Omni system. The remote allows access to over 1,000 terrestrial channels and hundreds of symbiotry satellite stations. However, the batteries are dead. So I guess that's kind of the excuse for... Well, one is a joke because, obviously, batteries in a remote being dead used to be a lot more common than it is now, I think. But it's also why we only have our one channel, essentially. So with that, let's get into the environment system and get caught up to speed on global events. Whoops, that is not the... Sorry, that's the wrong one. Actually, no, I should show that off, though. So if you remember from the previous game... Go into the environment. If you remember from the previous game, we had something like this as well, where it would show, there was like a space and a desert canyon and, different environments along with all the different music. But we don't really get that this time. Like, it's more photorealistic than before, of course, obviously. We got this waterfall, another scenic waterfall, African plains, I guess. But that's it. There's no special music tracks. There's no, like, special interactions with them, which I think goes to show whereas, like, that first time, I think it was more of an advertisement for what they were capable of. Whereas here, they were definitely showing more of what they were capable of in-game. So there wasn't as much of a need for this. So this feels more like just a callback to the original Environ system rather than advertising. Although it does go to show they could use real photorealistic environments as opposed to all the ones they use here, which are more mocked up or 3D generated. But all right, now for the meat of the episode. All set. So INN is still here from 10 years ago. You may remember Pegasus Prime. We had an INN news flash with Mark Johnson, and he is still the host of INN. And we've got 4 big headline stories that we're going to go through. 3 of them are important. The Sinclair incident is more of like just a way to quickly catch you up if you haven't played the first game. But, well, this first story concerns us, so I guess let's go into that.
INN will return after word from our sponsor.
The soon-to-be-released Geno, A Fond Remembrance, is Volume 4 of G-Tech's Rock Through the Ages collection. Never before has there been a video collection that captures the many moods of Geno Andrews. You'll hear the melancholy Geno.
So many songs about the rain.
The rebellious Geno.
When you're selling yourself, set a price to pay. When you're selling yourself,
Yes, the carefree Geno.
it's been my dream to be a traveler of sorts, to visit all kinds.
And of course, the lovesick Geno.
A song for her is all she wants from me.
All of his chart-topping videos are here, brought back from the archives of the past and completely remastered in stunning 4D sound. In fact, Geno, A Fond Remembrance is the most complete collection of Geno's hits ever compiled on one EC. Call our toll-free ShopNet line now and receive a free sample from the upcoming EC that's bound to be an instant classic. Gino, a fond remembrance.
So these ads are actually important. You'll notice that they all have a ShopNet order code, which we're actually going to use them all later. But this one's more of a Easter egg / advertisement for Gino Andrews, because if you remember, Gino Andrews along with Bob Stewart are like the two principal audio guys for the bulk of, if not the entirety of, the Journeyman project trilogy. They both worked on Pegasus Prime, as we saw. I'm not quite sure if one or both of them worked on Journeyman Project Turbo, but obviously they both work here. And I believe they also both worked on Legacy of Time. So Gino Andrews, I think, also works as like a freelance musician. So this is kind of an advertisement for him, and it's kind of cool that they let him do this too, and paid him some tribute this way, because he really does bring the series to life. The music is honestly like half of the appeal of these games. It just so brilliantly sets the mood. But in any case, let's continue on to the main story.
The ongoing saga of Gage Blackwood took a frightening twist this morning when the agent of the Deep Time Unit broke house arrest to jump 9 years back in time. Fortunately, the illicit time jump was detected, and he was immediately apprehended by Agent 8 of the Temporal Protectorate. Although it's still not clear how and why Blackwood obtained the TSA jumpsuit, Temporal Security Agency officials did say that no distortion ripples have yet been detected, and that there is no reason whatsoever to believe that Blackwood has altered history in any way. Our Lisa Long has a report from TSA Administrative Headquarters.
In a strange turn of events that can only be described as unimaginable, the highly decorated Gage Blackwood, better known as Agent 5 of the Deep Time Unit, has been arrested and put on trial for the crime of historical sabotage. We apologize for the lack of trial footage, but because of the sensitive nature of the material being presented, no recording equipment has been allowed into the tribunal wing of the United Ministry Complex where the trial is being held. The drama unfolded 3 weeks ago when Agent 2 of the Temporal Protectorate discovered 4 distortion ripples while conducting an unscheduled historical scan. As it turned out, the dates of the ripples exactly coincided with times to which Agent 5 had been sent for research purposes. The agent immediately contacted his supervisors, and on their orders, 3 agents were sent to apprehend Agent 5, who offered no resistance. Later that day, more evidence was found in Blackwood's locker, suggesting that he had disobeyed Temporal Security Agency directives for personal gain. Unless deemed absolutely necessary, the TSA will not send agents to investigate or restore the distortions, as any further tampering with history may cause adverse effects, possibly even turning the ripples into full reality distortion waves.
It really sets up a couple of important things, and some of this I'm just thinking about now. Well, first off, you'll notice she's in front of TSA headquarters. Obviously, this must be public headquarters and not their actual headquarters. Obviously, I imagine the location of the Temporal Security Annex is still top secret, despite the publicity that the Sinclair incident caused. So yeah, we're on trial for tampering with history, but the important thing was they said that no one is being sent to investigate the ripples unless it becomes necessary, because they don't want to make things worse. So what that means is we should, as long as we don't affect anything, which we won't, we do not have to worry about interference from the TSA. So any agents we find, like anyone we find that's out of place, is going to be really sus. And now we have more information about the trial of Agent 5. So let's go into the prosecution.
Prosecuting attorney Phil Stevens alleges that Agent 5 intentionally altered the past in 4 of the 10 time zones to which he had been sent for research purposes, his only apparent motive being personal gain. In so doing, Agent 5 would have knowingly violated Temporal Security Agency ethics, as well as the law. as temporal sabotage in any form is considered the worst possible crime against humanity, Stevens is aiming for the maximum allowable sentence.
And you'll notice we have hyperlinks because the internet was new and revolutionary back in 1995. So in this one, just the temporal security gives us information about the Temporal Security Agency. Temporal Security Annex of the Crime Intervention Commission, also known as the Temporal Security Agency, is the government headquarters for time travel activity. From this top-secret compound, elite agents safeguard history from illicit time travelers and embark on historical research missions. And we can see now the Crime Intervention Commission. As crime began to decline after world unification, the number of policing agencies also began to decrease in number. With the advent of the transporter, the need for such agencies decreased even more in both number and kind. In 2237, the Crime Intervention Commission was formed as a single agency responsible for controlling crime worldwide. The CIC has several branches, including the Temporal Security Annex. So we can see now we're basically accessing United Earth Ministries records here. So this is why this section takes so long, is just following up on all these hyperlinks.
The burden of proof lies on the prosecution. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Gage Blackwood was responsible for the distortion ripples. There is strong evidence working against Blackwood, including both computer records that place him at the altered historical locations and contraband that was discovered in his locker. But the evidence alone is not enough to ensure a conviction. With this in mind, prosecuting attorney Stevens has directed his questioning toward eliminating other possible explanations for the ripples.
Information on distortion ripples. Temporal distortions are the result of anachronisms or temporally inappropriate items left in the past. There are two basic types of anachronisms that can cause temporal distortion: simple and effective. A simple anachronism is a very minor alteration to the past, which has no noticeable effect on history. For example, spilling water would be a simple anachronism, as it would likely evaporate before anyone were to take notice of it. Such minor distortions do not represent a threat and are caused by even the most careful of agents from time to time. A far greater concern are effective anachronisms, of which there are two kinds: limited and expansive. While their effects to history are not great, limited effective anachronisms are the result of more significant changes to the past. These changes are usually more enduring than simple anachronisms, but their repercussions, known as temporal distortion ripples, fade with time, as they do not affect anyone greatly enough to alter the course of history. Expansive effective anachronisms, on the other hand, are changes to historically significant items or events that have major repercussions. These anachronisms cause reality distortion waves or chain reactions that grow with time, making sweeping changes to history as they do so. If a reality distortion wave should ever reach the present, those who aren't uncreated in its wake will suddenly find themselves with new lives, completely unaware that anything had ever been different. Both types of effective anachronisms are to be taken very seriously, as the most likely cause of such disturbances is deliberate historical sabotage.
The burden of proof lies on the witnesses for the prosecution have included Agent 2 of the Temporal Protectorate, the TSA's chief technician, and the designer of the circuitry for the jumpsuit.
These go... Okay, so this goes to the Deep Time Unit, which I think we already read this one because it just goes to our files file chip. Oh, maybe not. This one is... Let me cross-reference background. It is slightly different because that was 2 pages. Okay. Deep Time Unit. Along with the development of the Time Displacement Unit came a rethinking and restructuring of the Temporal Security Agency. Gone were the days of historical security relying entirely on one agent using one machine. Now multiple agents had the freedom to move through time at will, and several years had gone by without incident changing the prevailing opinion on the security of time travel. In 2326, the decision was made to expand the Temporal Security Agency to include a historical research team. This team, self-dubbed the Deep Time Unit, is comprised of 4 individuals who are each responsible for researching and recording various periods of history. The 3 other restructured units of the TSA include the Temporal Protectorate, the Maintenance Team, and Management. The Temporal Protectorate, as before, is responsible for safeguarding history from sabotage. The upkeep of files and equipment is the responsibility of the maintenance team, and management oversees all TSA operations. And we have the Time Displacement Unit, or Jumpsuit. As had been expected, Earth's incorporation into the symbiotree of peaceful beings brought with it astounding advances in technology. These advances aided the TSA in developing the next generation of time machines. The Time Displacement Unit, or Jumpsuit, incorporates an entire time machine into a mobile self-contained suit. The greatest advantage of the Jumpsuit is that it can forge its own null time tunnel from one location to another, eliminating the need to return to the present between jumps. This new technology rendered Pegasus obsolete, and in August of 2325, the time machine was dismantled. Its huge generator was destroyed, and the smaller core elements put into storage in a location known only to the agents of the Temporal Security Agency. So, I think this one is actually pretty much our Files Biochip article on Jumpsuit, but we have hyperlinks now. So, we have the Symbiotree. The Symbiotree of Peaceful Beings, also referred to as the Symbiotree, is a consortium of peaceful races from throughout the galaxy who have come together for the purpose of sharing technology and culture. Earth was admitted into the Symbiotree in November 2318. So they're basically like the Federation from Star Trek. TSA, we read that already. Null Time Tunnel. The process of time travel involves creating a breach in the space-time continuum through which the traveler can cross. Within this void, which is called a null time tunnel, the laws of space and time do not apply. Entering or exiting a null time tunnel causes a sudden change in the amount of matter present in the universe at that moment. The result of this change is a startling display of arcing energy known as the displacement effect. So that's like the white and purple electricity that happens when we jump around through time. Pegasus. The world's first time machine, known as Pegasus, was the brainchild of part-time historian and full-time physicist Elliot Sinclair. In 2311, after seeing Sinclair's time-bending experiments, the government contracted him to build a full-scale operational time machine. The purpose of this device was to explore our past as well as to discover the truth behind many disputed historical events. Pegasus was dismantled in 2325 after the introduction of the Time Displacement Unit, which integrated a fully functional time machine into a mobile suit. So I think that's all these. So you can see why this takes long, because you have hyperlinks within hyperlinks within hyperlinks. Okay, so these are all the same. TSA. I hate that they highlighted several times throughout the article.
Witnesses for the prosecution.
All right, so now we can page forward. So yeah, it's like a web that just keeps expanding off of every branch. So let's start with Agent 2. The investigation began when Agent 2 of the Temporal Protectorate ran an unscheduled manual historical scan, a procedure normally performed twice a year to reveal any anomalies missed by the scanner's faster but less sensitive automatic scan mode. Agent 2 discovered a temporal ripple that originated in the year 1050 AD, indicating that someone had gone back to that time and affected a historically important object or event. He soon found 3 more ripples in the years 1204 AD, 2247 AD, and 1488 AD. Fortunately, none of the changes were serious enough to cause a full reality distortion wave. The agent then realized that the ripples exactly coincided with several of Agent 5's research mission dates. Agent 2 reported what he had found and was subsequently sent after Blackwood along with Agents 3 and 7. They located the suspect in Tahiti, where he was spending his day off, and apprehended him without incident. Following TSA protocol, they then brought Agent 5 to the United Ministry Complex, where he was arraigned and later released to house arrest. United Ministry Complex. The United Ministry Complex was built in 2322 to fulfill the need for a single location for all major judicial, political, and symbiotree affairs. In addition to the courthouses and government offices, the complex also houses symbiotree embassies and an assembly hall designed to accommodate all of the member races. So, this, I guess, replaces the old United Ministry complexes. You remember, Caldoria, I think, had like ministry complex that was supposed to be like head of government. That's where they met the symbiotree, but this was built 4 years after our induction into the symbiotree, and I think this is located actually somewhere on Earth rather than on one of the floating city ships. Alright, so that's Agent 2. Chief Technician. Prosecuting Attorney Stevens called the TSA Chief Computer Technician to testify based on his knowledge of the chronolog scanner array. The technician testified that the chronolog scanners were designed to detect any illicit time jumps and are monitored at all times by a member of the Temporal Protectorate. Yet, to his knowledge, at no point during the period in question were the scanners ever offline or performing improperly, and at no point was an unsanctioned time jump detected, a fact corroborated by the security logs. Chronolog scanners. Located within the Temporal Security Annex, the Chronolog scanner array monitors history for illicit time jumps and temporal distortions. However, as history is so vast, the scanner's sensitivity has been reduced to give them the speed necessary to continually monitor the entire past for distortions. As a result, the sensors are not able to detect minor distortions in automatic scan mode, and through manual scans, and thorough manual scans must be performed twice a year. Assume that's the same article. Yep. Alright. Circuitry designer. Mrs. Margarine Chow was called to testify based upon her knowledge of the time displacement unit or jumpsuit for which she designed the circuitry. When asked whether it was possible for someone else to have used Agent 5's jumpsuit, Mrs. Chow said that the security precautions mandated that only one person be able to use each suit. She went on to explain that each jumpsuit is coded specifically to the DNA of the agent who uses it and will automatically self-destruct if tampered with. Yeah, we kind of read all that in our files, biochip. Computer records. In addition to the computer records, which document Agent 5's research activity, the video log reports made by him during his research mission jumps definitively place him at each of the altered historical locations. The files were not made available to the press. And physical evidence. An inspection of Agent 5's locker revealed one valuable but not historically significant object from each of the 4 altered time zones that he was sent to. The 4 items included a gold ornament from Chichen Itza, a jeweled orb from Chateau Gaillard, a sketch from Leonardo da Vinci's studio, and a signed document from Kenneth Farnston's lab. And this is where it really branches out when you get into the UEM historical archives. Chichen Itza. The ancient Mayan city of Chichen Itza was founded in the year 514 AD. It is located in central Yucatan, about 60 miles inland from the coastal resort community of Cancun. Excuse me. Throughout its first 5 centuries, the city underwent several periods of decreased activity and refounding before finally being founded for the last time by the Toltec Maya sometime around the year 1000 AD. After several decades of being the capital city of Cancun, it was abandoned in the year 1194 for unknown reasons. So here we can see the famous El Castillo Pyramid. And these are, with the exception of Farnstein's lab, these are all real locations, and they really did their research. It's quite impressive, honestly. And a couple places where, and here's the Caracol at Chichen Itza. So, like, you can go into Google Maps and see these. It's pretty impressive. But yeah, even some of the guesses, like the caverns beneath the Mayan, they found real caverns that stretched beneath Mayan temples with ground-penetrating radar, like decades after they made this game. So, you know, even where they did kind of embellish and make their own stuff up, they honestly made such good guesses that it may as well have been fact. So here we have links to Maya. I believe the Toltec. I guess we'll do Toltec first since it's shorter. The Toltec Indian civilization ruled the Central American highlands from the 10th to 12th centuries AD when they were invaded by neighboring Indian tribes. The Toltecs were excellent craftsmen and sophisticated builders, and their influence can be seen in Chichen Itza and other post-classic Mayan centers. So just a warning, if you are a person who prefers to use the proper, the currently accepted terminology, this game was made in 1995. So yes, they refer to Native Americans or indigenous peoples as Indians. So, forewarning, if that bothers you, just be aware. The game is a product of its time. But I don't think they meant any ill by it. I'm sure if they made it today, they would have called them indigenous Americans or whatever the proper term is. I think that's still the proper term. And then now we have the Maya. The Maya were a race of Indians who inhabited the Yucatan Peninsula of South America until approximately 1500 AD. They had organized social centers, a very advanced knowledge of mathematics and astronomy, and a complex hieroglyphic writing system. But like their Aztec neighbors, the Maya are best known for their violent, polytheistic religion, the chief deity of which was the creator god Itzamna. Mayan culture reached its peak between 300 and 900 AD, after which point their major cities began to decline from a combination of natural disasters and inadequate agricultural planning. New Maya centers of heavy Toltec influence then began to come to power, most notably Chichen Itza. But these centers were also later abandoned when the region came under Spanish rule in the early 16th century. So here we can go to Itzamna, and this is a relief of the god from one of their temples. The Mayan god Itzamna had many personas. He was the god of the sky and the inventor of writing and books and the patron of science and learning. But most importantly, the Maya saw him as the creator of human life. So you can kind of see going through these triggered my interest in history, just in general, because I find all this stuff fascinating. So that's that rabbit hole. We'll probably go back to all these later, as you'll see. But next we have Chateau Gaillard. Located on a ridge of the Les Andelys Mountains in Europe, Sector 44, Chateau Gaillard was built as a defensive outpost by Richard the Lionheart to protect territories he had taken in Normandy. Richard's rivalry with Philip Augustus of France went on for several years, but Richard's saucy castle remained untouched. And here we can see Chateau Gaillard Historical Park. Unlike in real life does not have a bubble over it, but there is. The ruins still exist, and you can visit them in France, at least to some degree. I don't know how much they let you tour it because of obviously safety risks, because it's not really maintained or anything. But in 1204, 5 years after Richard's death, Philip's armies laid siege to Chateau Gaillard, and the castle that was once thought impregnable fell after just 6 months. Today, very little remains of Chateau Gaillard. So now we have Richard the Lionheart, or Richard I. Richard I was born in AD 1157, the third son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. He assumed the throne in 1189 and ruled England for 10 years. During his reign, Richard participated in the Third Crusade and battled with Philip Augustus for control of several French territories. And here we can see the Great Seal of Richard I. In honor of his courage and achievements as a military leader, Richard was dubbed Coeur de Lion, or Lionheart. However, to finance his war efforts, he imposed heavy taxation, eventually bleeding England dry. In March of the year 1199, Richard was shot in the shoulder with a crossbow bolt while reconnoitering the castle of a lord who he felt was holding out on him. The wound became severely infected and he died just 2 weeks later. And we saw Richard in another game, Assassin's Creed 1. If you saw that, we encountered Richard the Lionheart there. But now we have all these other articles to go through. Henry II. Henry II of England reigned from 1154 to 1189. By marrying Eleanor of Aquitaine, he gained many territories in France. Henry II was the father of both King Richard I and King John of England. And here's the Great Seal of Henry II. Eleanor of Aquitaine. Duchess Eleanor of Aquitaine was born in 1122, the daughter and heiress of William, Duke of Aquitaine. Her first marriage to Louis VII of France was annulled in 1152. She was later remarried to Henry II of England, with whom she bore 5 children, including both King Richard I and King John of England. And here's the tomb of Eleanor of Aquitaine. When her sons rebelled against their father, she supported them, for which she was imprisoned by Henry until his death in 1185. After years of being involved in the political affairs of her sons, Eleanor of Aquitaine died in 1204. Oh, she actually lived a pretty long life for the time, almost 80 years. So her first marriage, so she was like around 30 when her first marriage was annulled, and then went on to have 5 kids. Holy shit. Alright, so let's go back to Richard I. Yeah, okay. So the Third Crusade. The Crusades were a series of military expeditions led by the European Christian powers in the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries. The goal of these religious conquests were to recover Christian holy lands in Palestine from the Muslims. And then we have Philip Augustus. Born in the year AD 1165, Philip Augustus ruled France from 1180 until 1223. Philip II was an able leader who participated in the Crusades and established France as a European power. After years of quarreling with King Richard I, he eventually recovered all French territories held by England. And then we have King John of England. King John of England reigned from 1199 until his death in 1216. He was the son of Eleanor of Aquitaine and Henry II, and the brother of Richard I. His concessions to Philip Augustus of France earned him the nickname John Lackland. And here is a bronze statue of King John. He also earned the nickname King John the Soft Sword, as we'll learn later. So I think that's all the articles there. Yes, okay. There will be more later. Leonardo da Vinci, a masterful artist, inventor, and architect, Leonardo da Vinci was one of the most influential people to have ever lived. Leonardo was born on April 15, 1452, in the small town of Vinci, Italy. At the age of 17, he began an apprenticeship in his studio of the noted artist Verrocchio. His talent soon became apparent, and by the age of 25, he was creating his own master works of art. Leonardo later took up many other interests, including sculpture, anatomy, invention, architecture, music, astronomy, writing, and philosophy, of which he was accomplished in all. His most famous works include the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, and the Virgin and Child with St. Anne. He can also be credited with dozens of inventions in the areas of weaponry, textile development, transportation, lifting, automation, and flight. Leonardo da Vinci died on May 2, 1519, at the age of 67. And if we go through the pictures, we can see this as a sketch of Leonardo da Vinci, obviously in his old age, a picture of the Mona Lisa, and a design for a flying machine. And right now I am playing Assassin's Creed 2, so we have their depiction of Da Vinci. And we have just one article, Verrocchio. Okay. Andrea del Verrocchio, best known for having been a tutor of Leonardo da Vinci, Andrea del Verrocchio was an extremely gifted painter and sculptor of the Italian Renaissance in his own right. His most famous work is an equestrian monument which shows masterful technique and composition. Okay, so he made a horse statue. And now for the one where the writers were able to go fully creative, Kenneth Farnstein's lab. Dr. Kenneth Farnstein was the probable creator of the Self Here Life series of sculptures. Born on July 7, 2179, Farnstein was an exceptionally gifted only child. He was sent to the best schools and ultimately earned PhDs in cognitive science and artificial intelligence. His thesis, an introspective examination of the foundations of sentience, is a remarkable text that is, to this day, required reading for most students of cognitive science. Soon after his graduation in 2206, Dr. Farnstein started the hugely successful biotechnology company Gentech, of which he was the president and CEO for several years. During his time at Gentech, he grew wealthy but eventually became bored with his supervisory role and longed to return to where the real discoveries were being made. Past the time, Farnstein retreated into the arms of his second love, art. Through his involvement and support of the artistic community, he earned a reputation as a passionate patron of the arts. 12 years after starting Gentech, without warning or explanation, Dr. Farnstein sold off his stock and purchased the 50-year-old decommissioned research station Amrex. He refurbished the station, making it entirely self-sufficient and adding several modules made from hollowed-out asteroids. The station was moved from deep solar orbit under veils of secrecy, and Farnstein disappeared into the shadows of space. 2 decades later, the reclusive genius reappeared briefly on Earth and began selling paintings. He was reputed to have told buyers that the works of art were made by an artificial sentience which he had created, and that he was reluctantly selling them to further finance his research. These paintings were admired for their powerful raw energy, but did not receive great critical acclaim, as they were considered to lack a maturity of style. However, they did enjoy a brief flash of popularity in the art scene, mostly generated by the controversy generated by the famous scientist's intriguing claim. Interest quickly died down, however, as Farnstein continuously evaded requests to present his artists, with assertions that outside contact would taint the experiment. For a few more years, Dr. Farnstein endured the skepticism of the art community and the patronizing of his colleagues, who all sadly believed that he was a senile has-been. Eventually, his paintings stopped appearing on the market, and the world gradually forgot about Kenneth Farnstein and his dubious creation. In February of 2282, a space sweeper made a startling discovery while trolling low Saturn orbit. The salvage vessel scanners detected a derelict space station which had been almost entirely destroyed by a shower of comet fragments. The station's beacon identified it as the Magellan Corporation's deep space research platform, AMRAX. Inside, the crew discovered the long-dead remnants of an advanced computer, the core of which they brought back to Earth for study. The computer was based on a radical new form of biotechnology which took the world's foremost technologists years to understand. The complicated computer's resonant softweb had long since dissolved with the draining of the station's capacitance array, but its advanced architecture led to the development of today's ubiquitous biochip technology. Another, in some ways more intriguing discovery, were several astounding globes of a similar biomass which, when interacted with, blossomed into multi-dimensional art pieces which subsequently threw the art world on its collective ear. So new and startling were the sculptures that, in conjunction with the discovery of the computer core, many in the scientific community were led to the speculation that perhaps Dr. Farnstein had in fact created an artificial creative personality as he had claimed. But with the computer dead and any notes or research destroyed with the laboratory module, most people have attributed the pieces to Farnstein himself. The remains of Dr. Farnstein were never found. Several modules, including the research lab and much of the habitat wing, were sheared from the station's frame by the violent impact of the space debris. It's presumed that Farnstein was aboard one of these and perished in the accident. So we have a lot of articles to go through here. First we have the self-awareness morphing sculpture, which we'll see these morph later. Okay, so first 2 pages, nothing. So AMRAX. Here we can see the Lazy Jane video log, which is really brilliant. I wish there was a higher res version of it. It's just a flyby of the in-game 3D model that we'll be navigating him around, but still. The Deep Space Research Station AMRAX was originally commissioned in 2173 by the Magellan Corporation as a long-range parallax array platform. From its deep solar orbit outside the apogee of Pluto, it was positioned to scan deep space for singularities for possible commercial use. The AMRAX is better known, however, as one of the more famous Flying Dutchmen in astronautical history. Purchased and refurbished by Dr. Kenneth Farnstein in 2221, the AMRAX was discovered in the year 2282 by a salvage vessel scanning low Saturn orbit for ice mining rigs. It had been severely damaged by an asteroid shower and was floating derelict. Inside, the crew of the salvage vessel found an advanced biocomputer and 4 remarkable interactive sculptures that were later credited to Dr. Farnstein. Though the works have since been recognized as masterpieces for the superstitious crew of the space sweeper Lazy Jane, they were the memories and ghosts of a long-dead crew, and the eerie story of the AMRAX is still told among spacers in the cold, dark stretches between the stars. Alright, so there's the AMRAX. Same video log there. Biotechnology. The word biotechnology refers to the use of biological organisms in industrial or informational processes. The foundation of modern biotechnology is the neurosynaptic polymer gel, a viscous liquid supporting a synthetic structure of neurons whose complex interaction creates pseudosynaptic pathways. The revolutionary nature of this technology comes from the remarkable way in which the relationship between the neurons flexes in response to the evolution of its softweb or behavior pattern, in effect allowing the software to continuously redefine the configuration of the hardware for maximum efficiency. This phenomenon has opened the doors to a new generation of intelligent lateral thinking computers and also manifests itself in the application of neural mass to consensual polymorphing, as first demonstrated by Dr. Kenneth Farnstein's brilliant Self-Here Life series of interactive sculptures. Many, in fact, consider Dr. Farnstein to be the father of modern biotechnology, as today's neural computers are directly derived from a revolutionary prototype discovered aboard a derelict space station in the year 2282. And here we can see a typical biochip, which I believe, if it spins around once more, yes, is the Samco translator biochip. which we will be seeing later. Softweb. A neurocomputer's functions are determined by the softweb that resides within it. The softweb controls the computer's learning and overall functioning by altering connections between the neurons or engrams according to an evolving behavior pattern. This behavior pattern begins as an instruction code or key, much like the DNA pattern of organic life, and becomes more complex as the program experiences and learns. Although lateral intelligence routines have become very sophisticated, technologists are still searching for a key that will allow for true spontaneous creativity and awareness, the so-called spark of life. So, at this point, you'll remember we had a artificial intelligence in Pegasus Prime, which I think was very experimental, and which is probably still kind of standard issue, but it's not like she doesn't have emotions. She makes attempts at emulating them, but I don't want to say she's not truly alive, but she's not what we would qualify as truly human, I guess. So just keep that in mind. And obviously, her existence is not known in the wider scientific community. I believe, even with the popularity of the TSA after the Sinclair incident. Alright, so that's kind of Francine. So that's a physical evidence. That was just a prosecution. Now we have to do the defense, so excuse me for a moment while I blow my nose. Alright, I promise this gets shorter after the second headline story. Kind of. But yes, now we have the defense.
In the absence of an alibi or any evidence proving Agent 5's innocence, defense attorney Sandra Gallagher will be setting out to show, through the testimony of character witnesses, that it is not likely Mr. Blackwood committed the crime. If the defense can elicit some doubt of Blackwood's guilt, he will go free. Witnesses for the defense will include Agent 3 of the Deep Time Unit, Agent 8 of the Temporal Protectorate, the Commissioner of the Temporal Security Agency, and Agent 5 himself.
Alright, we've read through all of those, thankfully.
The defense has not yet had the opportunity to present its case. However, we have contacted both the Chief Technician and Commissioner of the TSA to ask them their feelings on the arrest of Gage Blackwood. Neither Agent 3 of the Temporal Security Agency nor Mr. Blackwood could be reached for comment.
Alrighty. And now we have the interview. So this section is a little bit shorter because I think it's mostly just these interviews. So let's start with the Chief Technician.
With us now is William Doughton, the TSA Chief Technician. He joins us live from the Temporal Security Agency Administrative Headquarters. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Doughton.
Thank you, Mark.
You've known Gage Blackwood for many years, and I understand that the two of you are good friends. Do you think he's guilty?
Absolutely not. The thought that he could be guilty never even crossed my mind. I mean, friend or no, here you've got someone who's dedicated his whole life to protecting history and now stands accused of violating it. That's ridiculous. And if you don't believe me, look at his record. The man's a decorated hero. You can't overlook that fact just because it doesn't fit neatly into the story the prosecution's trying to sell.
Isn't it true you testified that no one else made a time jump to any of the altered historical locations?
No, actually I testified the scanners didn't register anyone making a time jump to those locations. But computers are only as intelligent as their human programmers. Now, I believe it's possible that someone could have shadowed Agent 5's jumps. If a second time traveler were to make a jump within a few seconds of the first into the same location, the chronolog scanners probably wouldn't recognize it as a second jump.
Have you been able to test this theory?
No, not yet. It's too dangerous. If two people were to travel through the same null time tunnel and land in the exact same place, well, their matter would mix and that would kill them.
And you believe that someone found a way around this?
It's possible, yes.
Okay, well, thank you for your insights, Mr. Doughton.
That or someone just thought the risk was worth taking. So So this is why going through this research is very important, because it gives you insight as to how you were set up, or at least points you in the right direction in other cases. So in this case, this combined with Agent 5's logs, if you remember from his logs, he talked about seeing like a version of himself that was out of phase with himself, like a ghost himself, which when you combine that with this theory, sounds like exactly what Dalton was saying. Someone was using the same null time tunnel as us to travel to these zones and would appear maybe a few seconds after us or a few seconds before us, something, one or the other. I think they appeared before us for reasons you'll see later, because we are using Agent 5's original jump coordinates. So this explains how the perpetrator was able to evade TSA security, and to do so would require familiarity with how the TSA searches for illicit activity, as well as with time travel itself. So a lot of the evidence here, in lieu of like to be able to use the same called null time tunnel as us, they'd have to know when we were making these jumps. So the evidence points to one of these people on either the security unit or the research unit. And we know from Agent 2's testimony, from when, I believe it was Agent 2, when he was monitoring the time stream, that he realized the ripples corresponded with our mission. So that implies that all the personnel, all the agents, are aware of everyone's historical mission. So we have 9 suspects right now, which is a lot better than when we started, which was it could have been anyone. And now for the commission.
I have with me now Commissioner Jack Baldwin of the Temporal Security Agency, who's coming to us live from TSA Administrative Headquarters. Commissioner, thank you for joining us. Now, the first and most obvious question is, are you confident in your arrest of Gage Blackwood as the perpetrator of this crime?
We had to arrest Agent 5 because of the evidence, not because we think he did it. There was an obvious transgression. Someone was responsible for it, so we arrested the person to whom the evidence pointed. Now it's up to the courts to determine whether or not he's guilty.
So you believe he's innocent?
Absolutely. I've known Gage ever since he joined the TSA. In fact, I'm the one who recruited him. Gage Blackwood is a member of an endangered species. Gage Blackwood is a hero. He has put his life on the line many times to prevent this exact thing from happening. There's absolutely no way he would have abused his position at the risk of a single life, let alone history as we know it. Now, it just doesn't make sense.
Mr. Blackwood has been an agent for quite a while now, 13 years, I believe. Is it possible that the temptation just became too great for him to bear?
No. Gage is as committed to his duty now as he was back when he apprehended Elliot Sinclair. He was, and he is, our finest agent.
Okay, let's assume for a minute that he did do it. Knowing that he would be facing life imprisonment on Vega Thalon, do you feel that he would plead guilty?
First of all, it's a moot point because he didn't do it. But, presuming he did, knowing Gage, I'd say he had a damn good reason. And he would have confessed immediately. He wouldn't have pretended innocence, not for 1 minute. Bottom line, Gage Blackwood is no criminal. Gage Blackwood is a hero.
Okay, Commissioner, it looks like we're out of time. Thank you.
So at least it seems we've got some allies between the Commissioner and the Chief Technician. Obviously, we know Dalton helped us obtain our jumpsuit so that our future self could bring us into the future to clear our name. And obviously, the Commissioner is fighting tooth and nail at the courts to clear our name as well. Because obviously, the Sinclair incident really made him love us after that. You know, a little bit of a rough start, but I think that was mostly because we saw that time travel obviously has some effect on human physiology. In both versions of, Journeyman Project Turbo Pegasus Prime, Gage is having nightmares of Caldoria exploding and such, and that's why he is late to the TSA for the weeks leading up to his mission to stop Sinclair. And was also the reason why he was in trouble in the first place. So we know there's at least some effect on human physiology that time travel can cause. And so that was a short section. Now we have the editorial.
If Blackwood is indeed guilty, he has altered more than just the past. The future, too, will likely feel the results of his actions. The Deep Time Unit will probably be discontinued before ever realizing its full potential. But there is an even greater issue at stake. That is whether the Temporal Security Agency itself is more of a risk than a safety measure. Many feel that it should be shut down and everything related to time travel destroyed. Others argue that the technology has already been invented, so there's nothing stopping it from being reinvented for the wrong reasons. So in their opinion, the Temporal Security Agency must remain operational to safeguard against future acts of historical sabotage.
And I'm generally in the same camp as those who argue for the necessity of the TSA, because, like Mark Johnson said, the technology's already been invented. There's nothing stopping it from being reinvented. So that was the first headline story. Next, we have the Symbiometry technology discussion.
INN will return after a word from our sponsor. La peinture fraîche.
Jote Latzande. Sasta Gorsht.
If you hadn't understood those important messages, you would have just
Wet paint.
screwed up your best suit,
The Flippity Van Van.
driven off of a cliff,
Cheap meat.
been poisoned,
Restaurants located in the lobby.
and peed your pants on a foreign planet. Yes, for all those reasons and more, there's the Omniglot DM Dual Mode Translator Biochip from Samco. Just pop the Omniglot DM into any standard biotech interface and voila! No more frustration, no more confusion. The Omniglot DM instantly translates the written and spoken forms of any known language. It does it all! The Omniglot DM Translator Biochip from Samco. Get it today!
Samco Translator Biochip available at Frugal's and other fine stores for a low price of $199.90 or order over ShopNet. Product order code 689-22378. That's 689-22378. Order now.
$200 for a plugin that translates everything? That's a hell of a deal. But we'll be definitely ordering that one, because you can imagine how that might have some utility when we travel into the past. But I also just love these commercials. They're so 90s.
The heads of ministry will continue to meet with Symbiometry representatives today in the Assembly Hall of the United Ministry Complex. These talks were requested by several member races as a forum in which to discuss the place of time travel technology in the symbiometry of peaceful beings. Today marks the beginning of the third week of negotiations, yet there is still no end in sight. Sarah Michaels is standing by at the United Ministry Complex with a report.
Thank you, Mark. The main factor protracting the discussions is the inability of the symbiometry to decide what should be done with the technology. The representatives have formed three distinct factions whose strongly opposing views have caused them to remain tenaciously entrenched in a deadlock. While one group believes we are committing the unforgivable act of hoarding a vital technology, a second supports the symbiometry tenet that each race has sovereignty over its own technologies. The third contingent, which has grown in strength since the arrest of Agent 5, contends that time travel represents a threat to every race of the symbiometry and should be destroyed altogether. Even though most attending races strongly disagree with humanity's sole ownership of the technology, our heads of ministry refuse to acknowledge their arguments, citing its inevitable misuse as their foremost concern. Therefore, barring symbiometry action, it is unlikely that the status of time travel as a proprietary technology of Earth will change.
Now, these scenes were very revolutionary for their time and the amount of detail they had and such, but nowadays it's pretty obvious to see that it's an actor in front of a green screen where they're just projecting a static image. It's like the clouds aren't even moving. Something you probably wouldn't have noticed back in the day, but nowadays kind of stands out. Still, though, again, keep in mind, this was all revolutionary for 1995. So we have 4 branches here. Let's start with the appeal for sharing.
The opinion originally held by the majority of races represented at the talks is that time travel technology is an invaluable tool for self-discovery and, as such, should not be denied to any race. However, the Loxoni abandoned this position last week in favor of destroying the technology. Presumably, this sudden change of opinion was due in large part to the arrest of Agent 5, an unfortunate illustration of the danger of time travel.
So most of the links here are going to be various races of the symbiote, which most aren't, you don't need to read about, but it does add a lot of flavor to the world. So here we have the Loxoni. Biologically unlike anything known to humanity, the Loxoni are perfectly adapted for life on a rolled multi-orbital planetoid. As their homeworld careens through deep space from one solar system to the next, changes in gravity and temperature stretch and crack its tortured surface, creating gaping fissures leading deep into its crust. It is these hellish caverns that the Loxoni lovingly refer to as home. Though they live in total darkness, the Loxoni have highly developed ultraviolet sight, which allows them to navigate the caves and to communicate via changing light patterns which emanate from between the rocky plates that cover their body. They have the ability to focus these beams of UV light for long-range communication and for identifying various types of minerals, which is the mainstay of their diet. The powerful projecting mandibles of the Loxoni serve to both crush their food and clear passages through the caverns. They also often use their mandibles for other labor-intensive tasks, although they have several prehensile appendages tucked away between their plates. They lack the benefit of hearing. Medical records show that they once had eardrums, but are very sensitive to sonic vibrations. The Loxoni are highly moralistic and very social beings, living in tight-knit communities which share all the responsibilities of daily life, including raising their young. They are also very religious. Loxoni creation accounts tell of a lone supreme being who fashioned the entire universe, but feeling it an empty act, decided to give the rocks life so that its beauty could be appreciated. One very likely explanation for their beliefs is the lack of a single other life form on their planet. Obviously, the Loxoni's presence there is a great mystery to everyone but themselves. The Loxoni technological revolution was born out of necessity. Increasing population and changing conditions in the planet's core forced them to seek new ways to survive in their environment. The first anti-gravity vehicles were developed for surveying the massive crevices for food, shelter, and other basic needs. From there, it was a small step into space where the Loxoni discovered that they are not alone. Home planet Luxon, rogue multi-orbital planetoid. Atmospheric gravity, methane ammonia, 0.65 G to 0.78 G. Ideal temperature, negative 18 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 100 degrees. Sensory perception, sight, UV band 6, vibration sensitivity. Communication, changing light patterns, gestures, and writing. Preferred diet, minerals, transport prefix 116.
The opinion original. The Dorlun and Zangtrakar, on the other hand, have continued to cling tightly to their convictions. They're of the opinion that this technology is far too important to be buried because of paranoia. Time travel, the Zangtrakar argue, is like any other powerful tool. It represents a danger only if the user doesn't have the insight to take the proper precautions. And if care is taken, there should be no reason whatsoever to fear what should be the greatest advance the symbiote has ever known.
So now we have the Dorlun. These slow-moving, docile creatures are super intelligent by human standards and in fact spend most of their time contemplating, theorizing, and intellectualizing with themselves, that is. The Dorloon have complex multi-lobal brains, each lobe of which is capable of carrying on a completely different line of thought, and even possessing different personalities. The Dorloon can, according to latest analysis, be thinking about 34 things at the same time. Some of the species will use this range to accomplish a variety of tasks simultaneously. The majority consider this frivolous, however, and often devote almost all lobes to the same matter. Some of the lobes may even be contemplating themselves or the other lobes at work. The amount of geometrical intellectual activity at any given moment is staggering, outperforming most known computers. It is not surprising that the Dorloons spend so much time thinking that they accomplish little else in the physical world. They have evolved past the need for written or spoken language and rely solely on telepathy. Telepathic communication with Dorloon can prove an overwhelming and even painful barrage of thought for other species should the Dorloon involve more than a few lobes in a conversation. Thus, they are constantly practicing the art of singular, linear thought for the purposes of diplomatic discourse. For all their vast intellectual and philosophical achievements, the Dorloon are surprisingly primitive in their technology, as it is a low priority for them. When the Symbiotry discovered them in Earth year 1389 AD, they had not even achieved interstellar travel. Nonetheless, they are invaluable problem solvers and philosophers. It is thought that they may have evolved from groups of intelligent organisms, somehow bonding together to form one, thus they are quite capable of keeping themselves entertained, as they are never truly alone. The Dorloon lifespan is about 200 to 250 Earth years, and they reach physical and mental maturity at around 50 Earth years. Their nutritional needs are satisfied by the micro-rich glutinous solution that covers 76% of their native world surface. They need little shelter and no sunlight. They do not see, as we understand it, but are able to sense molecular densities around them through a complex series of electron radiatory organs located about the body. They hear in much the same way, interpreting complex particle movements. Though their wisdom and thought are universally respected, no one can really claim to fully understand these gentle scientists. Their true motivations and desires remain a mystery. Home planet, Hur, second planet of the Orpheus solar system. Atmosphere and gravity, mix of hydrogen and carbon dioxide, 1.86 G. Ideal temperature, 43 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 30 degrees. Sensory perception, electroradiatory echoing, auditory particle wave detection, extreme touch sensitivity. Communication, telepathy for manipulation and detection. For diet, mostly vegetarian, some fish and fowl. Transport prefix 361. And now we have the Zang Trakar. This is one of the more suspicious members of the Symbiotry. They are archetypical pragmatists and are members of the Symbiotry only because they feel it may profit them. For this reason, their membership is often a subject of dispute among the other races. As of yet, however, the Zang Trakar have taken no provocative actions that would lead to forcible banishment from the Symbiotry. The humans, the Zang Trakar, appear much like hyperactive insects, always chattering and scheming, or so it would seem. They share only what they do not need, but there is often a price. Their technology is highly advanced, and it was their scientists who originally pioneered thought field articulation mechanics. Aside from humans, they have most actively pursued time travel technologies, though more often than not their experiments have ended disastrously. The Zang Trakar are a prolific race, and they reproduce spontaneously by fragmentation. Thus, previous wars have actually increased their population. They are highly resistant to extreme temperatures, but are prone to spontaneous combustion in oxygen-based atmospheres. Luckily, their skills have allowed them to perfect highly durable and efficient environmental suits and chambers for the purposes of exploration and diplomacy. They see and hear much like humans, except in much higher bandwidths. To us, their speech sounds like indiscriminate screeches and clicks. Thus, translators are needed, and neither humans nor Zang Trakar can articulate the other's language. Home planet Praxis, fourth planet of Virgo's solar system. Atmosphere and gravity, helium, 0.75 G. Ideal temperature, 30 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 50 degrees. Sensory perception, sight, indigo band to UV band, 3. Taste, smell, auditory, 10 kHz to 15 kHz. Communication, vocal, 12 to 13 kHz range, and pictographic writing. Preferred diet, vegetarian, roots and small shrubs. Transport prefix 570. Symbiotry we've seen already.
Perhaps Brandon Farlink, the Dorloon emissary, stated the feelings of these two races most eloquently. At long last, he said, we can all be in touch with our pasts. Each race can now know the truths of its history. No longer must time be wasted with painstaking research and endless conjecture, only to arrive at an uncertain understanding of the events that shaped history. The answers, all the answers, lie within our reach if only we have the will to grasp for them.
And that is the end of that subsection. So next is the appeal for denial.
Despite being recently abandoned by the Kryn, two of humanity's staunchest supporters, the Sorolans and the Tsar, have continued to defend our right to autonomy over time travel technology. Like those that favor dismantling it, these two races would rather leave their past buried than risk losing it altogether. But unlike the others, the Sorolans and Tsar believe that humanity harbors a maturity beyond its years and can be entrusted with preserving the sanctity of history.
So let's start with the Sorolans here, since they were the focus of the last game. Sorolans, the oldest race of the symbiote, these noble creatures were also instrumental in its inception. They are widely respected throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and science, as well as their generosity and foresight. They possess keen prescient abilities, but do not allow precognition to affect their actions or the natural progression of streams. Instead, they are watchers, learners, and strong advocates of self-determination. They will always offer sage advice, but will never intervene in another race's affairs. They seem to share a particular bond with humans, the youngest and newest race of the symbiote, finding them a most promising and precocious race, despite their brief and impassioned lives. The biological lifespan of the average Sorolan is not known, but most Sorolans choose to exist for about 3,000 to 5,000 Earth years. Once they tire of life, they will gestate a new organism and pass all their accumulated thought, memory, and wisdom onto the offspring in a long and quiet ritual which culminates in their deaths. Thus, one could say that Sorolans never actually die, they just change bodies every few thousand years, which kind of makes me think of Time Lord regeneration. In addition to their prescient and telepathic awareness, the Sorolans have heightened sensory perception of space, sound, and energy. They perceive light and particle radiation in all frequencies, as well as sound and pressure waves, subspace activity, and even temporal shifts. The Sorolans are physically quite similar to humans, only much larger. This has led to some speculation about evolutionary relationships between the two species, but the Sorolans are hesitant to discuss this subject, preferring that we discover our past ourselves. They aren't that similar. Like, in terms of this universe, they're similar in that they're a bipedal species, but a Sorolan ain't ever going to pass for a human or vice versa. Let's just put it that way, and you'll see that in the third game. Home planet Cyril, fifth planet of Galena's solar system. Atmosphere and gravity, oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, 0.89 G. Ideal temperature, 25 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 10 degrees. Sensory perception, sight, light, and particle radiation, subspace and temporal rift sensitive, auditory, 50 Hertz to 10 kilohertz, telepathic, vocal, and writing. Preferred diet, seafood, some reptiles, fruits, and vegetables. Transport prefect, 707. That actually kind of surprises me. I kind of figured they'd be more vegetarian, but this is why I suspect that they knew something happened in the first game and why they still visited Earth even though we weren't ready. Because you'll notice they do have a sensitivity to temporal rifts, so I think they detected Sinclair's meddling, but like they don't know what was changed, just that something wasn't right. And obviously, like the article said, they don't let that determine what they do because they want to preserve the stream, as it were. So they still visited Earth, but they knew something was wrong.
Despite being recently abandoned.
Let's go through the Tsar next. The Tsar are almost unanimously considered to be the most whimsical members of the symbiote. They are a heterogeneous race, ranging in length from 0.25 meters to as large as 6 meters. These size variances are completely overlooked by the Tsar and are very fraternal with each other. Probably the most unusual trait of the Tsar is their ability to adhere to any surface in any orientation, gravity or no. They are easy to spot at symbiotry meetings. They're the ones sitting on the floors and walls. This phenomena is best explained as a kind of organic magnetism in which their cells modify their natural magnetic polarities to complement whatever material they come into contact with. Not surprisingly, Caesarian architecture is a spectacle to behold, as every surface has been prepared to be seen and occupied from multiple orientations. Also not surprising is that the Saurian predisposition for practical jokes, especially at the expense of other races. The Saur are highly social and very curious about other races and technologies, though they respect other races' right to privacy and strongly maintain their own. They are generally considered to be vain and are often seen adorned in ornate and extravagant outfits. Their decorating tastes are equally lavish, and they have a palate for precious collectibles from other cultures, though native Caesarian art, architecture, and above all festivities are renowned throughout the galaxy. Unlike many races, they have also advanced their biotechnologies to the point where they no longer need food to survive, and are, in effect, completely self-sufficient. However, they still enjoy the sensory and social rewards of consumption and are always seeking new and more extravagant cuisines. The Caesar locomate via a multitude of pseudopodia radiating from all directions of their body. Their sensory perceptions are highly acute, and they can see and hear in a broad range of frequencies, allowing for communication with almost any other race. Home planet Sar, 8th planet of the Orestes solar system. Atmosphere and gravity, nitrous oxide 1.46 G. Ideal temperature 27 degrees Celsius plus or minus 7 degrees. Sensory perception sight, IR band 5 to UV band 3, smell, taste, auditory, 10 Hz to 15 kHz. Communication, tone-based vocalization, music like writing. Preferred diet, self-sufficient. Transport prefix 930.
Despite being recent.
And finally, we have the Kryn. The Kryn are one of the most recent additions to the symbiotry. The circumstances of their induction are quite unique. When the symbiotry discovered them on their aquatic homeworld centuries ago, they were a non-tool-using race, having not naturally developed any opposable or prehensile limbs. However, because the Kryn were deemed to be highly intelligent and mentally evolved, the symbiotry decided, not unanimously, to grant them the use of prosthetic appendages should they so desire. In an effort to expand their role in the newly discovered universe, the Kryn accepted this artificial advancement and have since continued their pursuit of new advances to assert their place in the universe. The Kryn can be most likened to the dolphins of Earth, possessing streamlined bodies which allow them to glide through their fluid environment. Because of their environmental needs, there are now liquid tanks at all symbiotry and embassy facilities to accommodate Kryn emissaries. The Kryn site is based on a sensitivity to Klegmar radiation, which occurs naturally on their homeworld. In addition to their innate senses, their cybernetic implants further extend their sensory awareness. Their hearing is very similar to that of humans, and they often communicate vocally within a human audible frequency range. Home planet Aquion, 2nd planet of the Danmar solar system. Atmosphere and gravity, water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, 0.37 G. Ideal temperature, 10 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 10 degrees. Sensory perception, sight, Klegmar radiation, acute smell, taste, auditory, 5 kHz to 12 kHz. Communication, vocal, 11 kHz range. Preferred diet, fish, mostly small crustaceans. Transport prefix 272.
In fact, they suggest that our closeness to our violent past makes us even better suited to manage time travel, as the dire consequences of the misuse of technology still stain our racial memory. Unfortunately, theirs is a minority opinion. The prevailing response to this argument is that Earth's record with time travel speaks for itself. In just 10 years, there have already been incidents of deliberate historical sabotage, the latest of which allegedly involving an agent of the Temporal Security Agency. Our benefactors, however, dismissed the Elliott Sinclair and Gage Blackwood incidents as aberrant acts by disturbed individuals rather than a weakness of humanity as a whole. And they ask, as a sign of good faith and trust in the newest member of the symbiotry, that the future of time travel technology be left to our discretion.
Alright, So that's the appeal for denial. Now there's the appeal for dismantling.
The third viewpoint, which was originally held only by the Unwa, is that the existence of time travel technology represents a threat to the history of every race in the symbiotree. For this reason, these races feel that all existing time machines should be completely dismantled. Following the arrest of Agent 5, the Loxoni changed their allegiance from petitioning for the release of time travel technology to requesting its destruction.
So let's read about the Unwa. Little is known about the Unwa, and they can only sparsely be generalized about. Every Unwa is different than the others in physiology because each one evolves differently and is in fact always changing. Excuse me. In this respect, they can hardly be classified together as a race at all, as their only shared quality seems to be the ability to change. Not to be confused with shape-shifting organisms, the Unwa modify their physiologies by direct response to immediate environments as well as by absorption of other local materials and, it is suspected, other creatures. The lifespan and reproduction practices of the Unwa, if any, are a complete mystery to all but them, as are their nutritional, social, and physiological needs. They are very secretive about their origins and their habits, but are nonetheless valuable contributors to the symbiotree. It is speculated that the Unwa may have been engineered by another race, but this theory cannot be substantiated. The Unwa are nomadic beings, not claiming any homeworld or place of origin. They often travel alone or in clans of 3 to 5, but are somehow always aware of the locations of others of their kind. They are timid, almost to the point of hermitry, but are quite friendly once they have established trust. Still, their secretive nature makes them paranoid, and they do not like to be in the company of non-Ua for extended periods of time. Home planet unknown. Current seat of representation on Zulang, first planet of Orestes' solar system. Atmosphere and gravity not applicable. Ideal temperature 46 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 15 degrees. Sensory perception varies by individual. Communication varies by individual. Preferred diet unknown. Transport prefix 894.
The third viewpoint, they were joined by the Kryn, for whom this represents a break in their long-standing tradition of fervently supporting every race's right to sovereignty over its own technologies. The Loxoni now proclaim that if not destroyed, the technology must at the very least be put in the safekeeping of an elder race of the symbiotree. They cite security as their main concern. Like the others that share their goal, they feel that humanity lacks the necessary discretion to control such a powerful tool. As a side note, it should be mentioned that the Loxoni themselves are among the eldest races of the symbiotree.
Yeah, that sounds a little selfish, doesn't it? So, there's the 3 positions in these negotiations. Now let's see the results.
Despite the arguments made by the symbiotree envoys, the general opinion of the heads of ministry so far appears unswayed. Michael Rozhenko of the Northwest Asia Collective rebutted that the danger of time travel falling into the wrong hands and being used to change history, however slight, is still too great to even consider releasing the technology. It must be realized that time travel has not only the power to unlock the secrets of history, but also unparalleled potential for destruction. Few could argue that it would be foolish to give such a tool to anyone, regardless of its intended use. On the other hand, it's also too late for it to be destroyed, as was pointed out by Chancellor of Law Rick Allen, when he stated that the technology has already been created and can therefore be recreated. Chancellor Allen emphasized his point by attesting that if all known time travel technology were destroyed and a new time machine built without government knowledge or approval, there would be no way to intervene in the actions of the illicit time traveler. He would have free rein to rewrite history to his liking. Unfortunately, such scenarios are all too likely, as was proven by the Elliott Sinclair incident and the current trial of Gage Blackwood.
Alright, so that is the symbiotree technology discussion. So those first 2 articles really gives an idea of the state of the world 10 years after the Sinclair incident. How time travel is basically like, it's kind of like AI now almost, in that, is this something we should really be allowing? Is this something we should regulate? Is this something the government should regulate? I love it. It feels like a real issue, and they're discussing the real implications of a real issue. Okay, that's honestly, we're 2/3 of the way through the headline stories because Sinclair incident is pretty short. So let's start the last one. Lure of auction raises 138.5 billion credit.
INN will return after word from our sponsor.
Cheese girl!
Oh, yeah, I never noticed before, but you can actually see the cheese girl in the background there. But this is my favorite commercial out of them all because it's just so ridiculous. Cheese Girl, pressurized cheese food spread, Raleigh Chemical Company Consumer Division. Order info, just 3.5 credits plus 0.25 ShopNet surcharge. ShopNet product order code 625-94978. MCO and SUP cards also accepted. Send PO to Raleigh Chemicals Company, Sector 17, number 1158935. So, we will be getting used to this later too, but in the meantime, also just a side note is I forget exactly who it was, but I think the guy that's in this commercial was like one of the graphic designers or something for Buried in Time. So, fun little fact.
In a last-ditch effort to stay afloat, the Louvre Art Museum held an auction of unprecedented scale yesterday. The museum was forced to sell off many of its older collections to pay off creditors and to raise funds desperately needed for renovations to the facility. In a fervent display of support, the art community rallied around the historic landmark, showing that the museum itself is every bit as valuable an artifact as any of the works of art it contains. The auction was an astounding success, raising 138.5 billion credits, easily surpassing the 100 billion credit goal. This windfall was due in large part to one generous bidder who preferred to remain unidentified. Martin Walker is standing by with a live report from the Louvre.
Thanks, Mark. I'm standing inside the historic Louvre Museum in Paris. Behind me sits one of the few pieces to survive yesterday's extensive art auction. Items up for auction included artifacts and works of art from many of the Louvre's oldest collections, including the Da Vinci exhibit, the ancient Egyptian, and Toltec Mayan exhibits. 4 particular items were snapped up by a generous bidder who paid much more than the asking price. The bidder's identity is unknown, but it is assumed to be an art enthusiast who didn't want to see the Louvre shut down. There are rumors, however, that the buyer may actually have been acting on behalf of another race in the symbiotry, which, according to the Earth History Preservation Act of 2322, would be illegal. We're told an investigation may follow. Museum sources that I spoke to speculated that the revenue from the auction will be enough to keep the Louvre in operation for at least the next 5 years. However, they warned me that the price of admission may go up in order to help cover operating costs. A small price to pay for such a wealth of human history and culture.
Wow, so their annual operating budget is 25 billion, or 250 million credits. Yeah, because they raised 1.38 billion, I think, which is astounding, but I guess preserving historical artifacts is expensive. So we have 2 subpaths here, financial difficulties and high bidder. We'll start with financial difficulties.
The Louvre's financial difficulties arose from a combination of rising maintenance costs, overspending, and lower than normal attendance. Several costly acquisitions in recent years sunk the museum into spiraling debt. When repairs to the facilities became unavoidable and visitor attendance fell, it became clear that a major influx of cash was needed to cure the museum's ills. In June, the decision was made to auction off several of its older exhibits. That decision paid off well yesterday.
Here we have a link to the Louvre. The ancient palace known as the Louvre was constructed in Paris during the reign of Louis XIV. It was later turned into an art museum of worldwide renown, and still boasts such masterpieces as Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa and Kenneth Bernstein's Self-Awareness. The Louvre became the world's largest privately owned museum when it was purchased from the French government by a conglomerate of multinational firms in the year 2094. And I think these just go back to, to those previous articles, so nothing new to follow up there. And now let's find out more about this high bidder.
The 4 items that the unidentified bidder purchased included the Toltec Mayan ceremonial coffer, King Richard the Lionheart's sword from the Crusades, Leonardo da Vinci's Codex Atlanticus, and an interactive sculpture entitled Self-Awareness, credited to Kenneth Bernstein. Attendees of the auction said the buyer did not try to purchase any other items, but immediately made an excessive bid on these 4 artifacts as soon as the bidding opened.
Whoa. Let's hold on a bit. These time zones seem a little bit familiar, don't they? Yeah, each of these artifacts is from our time zone, so something's fishy here. I can put 2 and 2 together, and fortunately or unfortunately, all the articles we've been linked before, so let's...
Experts estimated that the unidentified man paid at least 7 billion credits more than the true value of the pieces, but none could say why he was so interested in 4 such disparate artifacts. They eventually conceded that it may have simply been their rich histories that intrigued him.
Alright, so now we have the 4 items themselves. Mayan coffer. This unusual jade and gold coffer is thought to have played a role in Mayan religious ceremonies. It was discovered in 2027 during an archaeological dig within a previously undiscovered cavern below the pyramid known as the High Priest's Grave in Chichen Itza. The High Priest's Grave. Here's the ruins of the High Priest's Grave. Excuse me. This small pyramid, located just outside Chichen Itza's urban center, is a replica of the massive El Castillo pyramid, which lies in the middle of the ancient Mayan city. Although the High Priest's Grave was originally believed to have been a ceremonial pyramid dedicated to the 9 Masters of the Night, it was later turned into a tomb for an influential high priest. The Masters of the Night. The ancient Maya believed that the twilight hours were ruled over by 9 gods whom they called the 9 Masters of the Night. These were the nastier gods of the Mayan pantheon, and regularly required ritualistic sacrifices for their appeasement. The 9 Masters of the Night were also believed to rule over the 9 levels of the underworld through which the souls of the departed were said to travel on their journey to the Deadland. According to Mayan beliefs, the underworld was a place of unearthly existence located below the plane of the living world, known as Xibalba, or the place of fright. It was said to be entered through a cave. The underworld of the Maya was composed of 9 levels, each of which being ruled over by one of the Masters of the Night. They believed that the souls of the dead would have to pass a trial on each of the first 8 levels before being allowed into the bottom level, known as Mictlan, or the Deadland. Mictlan. The ancient Maya believed that Mictlan, the Deadland, was the destination for the souls of the departed. According to the myth, the dead would have to pass through 8 levels of the underworld, passing a trial on each before being allowed into Mictlan, the 9th and final level of the underworld. In the Deadland, they would endure a dreary, eternal existence without joy or suffering. Alright, so... we've read about pyramid known as El Castillo is located in the middle of the urban center of Chichen Itza. Constructed sometime around 700 AD, the huge pyramid is dedicated to the Mayan god Kukulkan, known to the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl, or the plumed serpent. So, yeah. Okay, so Kukulkan is the Central American Indian god. Quetzalcoatl, known to the Maya as Kukulkan, was the god of the morning and evening star. He was also the patron of art, literature, agriculture, and science. Represented as a feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl was the chief deity of the Toltecs. Which we've seen Toltecs before, and here is a depiction of the serpent god Kukulkan, and Quetzalcoatl takes us to the same article because they're the same thing. The most distinctive features of the coffer are its cylindrical shape and intricate locking mechanism, which make it the most important find to ever have come out of Chichen Itza. complex mechanics of the device, which is similar in construction to a Chinese puzzle box, proved that the Maya were much more capable builders than previously believed. For many years, the coffer was thought to be cursed, as its first 4 owners perished under mysterious circumstances. It is now known that its lock mechanism contains poison needles that jab anyone who attempts to open it without having entered the proper combination. Yet despite the fact that the coffer is now better understood, old beliefs and superstitions have dissuaded any further attempts at opening it. Unfortunately, radiography has yielded few clues about the contents of this unique coffer, which currently resides in the Louvre Museum of Art and History. I'm kind of surprised. You'd think you could have like a robot, like build a robot to kind of brute force it, and just have it, put it in a little armor where it would be poked by the poison needles, or even a gap, because it doesn't need all the fleshy hand stuff, and you could just brute force the combination. But yeah, no one knows what's inside it. No one's opened it, and the few attempts they've made to scan it have yielded nothing. Must be naturally shielded or something. So there's the Mayan coffer, Richard I's sword. This beautiful sword remains one of the finest relics of the medieval period. Its masterfully engraved forged steel blade is embellished with intricate ornamental designs from the very tip down to its elegantly simplistic hilt, which is punctuated with a 4-carat diamond. Thought to have been lost forever after being taken by Philip Augustus in the siege of Chateau Gaillard in 1204, this masterpiece was unearthed almost a millennium later during the excavation of a condemned French chateau. The sword had apparently been in the collection of a wealthy baron who hid his valuables in an underground bunker during World War II. They remained there for almost 3/4 of a century until rediscovered in the year 2015. So, no new hyperlinks here, and I think for the most part these artifacts aren't real, I think. Like, obviously Richard I's sword is real, it existed, but it hasn't been found. No one, it's not in a museum or anything. Maybe it's in a collector's bunker, who knows, but I don't think any of the, and obviously self-awareness is fake, but yeah, they might have all existed at one point. Mayan coffer, at least the concept of that sounds familiar. But in any case, Codex Atlanticus. The Codex Atlanticus is Leonardo da Vinci's codex on flight. It contains his collected observations on the flight of birds, as well as designs for flying machines and other thoughts on how flight can be achieved by humans. The Codex Atlanticus, like all of da Vinci's other codices, is written in Latin mere writing, giving us a glimpse of his secretive nature. It is not known whether any of the flying machines designed by da Vinci were ever built. If so, they were certainly not capable of flight. However, as his designs and concepts could be seen in working flying machines centuries later, there's no denying that da Vinci must be credited as the father of the flying machine. Okay, so nothing else here is... It all just links to da Vinci 4 times. We've already seen that. And then self-awareness. This interactive sculpture, entitled Self-Awareness, is one of a series recovered from the derelict space station Amrax in AD 2282 that were later accredited to artist and biotechnologist Kenneth Farnstein. These sculptures have long been the subject of much speculation and controversy, as they followed a series of paintings, undoubtedly by the same author, which Farnstein himself credited to an artificial personality he had created. Though his claims were never substantiated, there is enough evidence to have captured the world's imagination, and to this day people speculate as to whether Farnstein had succeeded in what no one to this day has achieved, the creation of true artificial life. Regardless of their origin, the sculptures gained immediate recognition as masterpieces. Testimony to this was ably provided by the New York Chronicle art critic Kasserine Pollack in the following review excerpted from the May 12, 2286 edition of the paper. Humanity's long history of artistic endeavors has periodically allowed us mere mortals an occasional glimpse into the clarity of vision that is the domain of genius. The Van Goghs, Mozarts, the Stoics of this world have opened doors inside us with their work, for a moment bringing into sharp detail the foggy, fuzzy things at the peripheral edge of our own introspection. With an astounding series of multi-dimensional emotive constructions, the anonymous I Will Never Be Convinced of the popular crediting of Farnstein, author of the Self-Here Life sculptures, places herself among the ranks of history's great cartographers of the soul. The pieces, which in their neutral form of luminous spheres are impressive enough for their unfathomable technology to have a physical presence that is impossible to convey in words, as indeed they have evaded the most accomplished documentarians' attempts to capture them on the web. The experience of reaching out to self-awareness, the visceral response as it disrobes and unfolds into a chronologue of unfiltered emotion, is one that must be felt in situ. One has the sense, as with all great art, that is responding to you personally. What truly sets Self-Here Life works apart, however, beyond the controversy of their discovery and the novelty of their media, is the sense of unself-consciousness, as if the artist were simply purging herself of emotion, unfiltered by intellect, free of the pretensions of interpretation or analysis. One is left to wonder if the artist is not a child, unrestrained by the burden of understanding, but driven by the need to make tangible the elusive currents of life, as if to capture them in the frame of a canvas or the patterns of a projection, or to somehow bind them, like the power naming in arcane magic. But then, is that not what art has always been about? Okay, so nothing. The only link is to Farnstein and Amaranth. So actually, there weren't as many links in this section as I thought. So that concludes this section. We'll do the Sinclair incident, and then I'll end with my commentary, and that should be the lore dump out of the way.
The events surrounding the arrest of Agent 5 bring back, for most, memories of the Elliot Sinclair incident. That historic day 10 years ago could have turned out much differently if it weren't for Agent 5 of the Temporal Protectorate. After building the first ever functional time machine, only to have the government shelve the project because it was considered too dangerous, Sinclair decided to sidestep the politicians and build his own temporal transporter. Years later, when the Sorolans made contact with Earth to offer us a place in the symbiotry of peaceful beings, the xenophobic scientist suddenly found himself with a new purpose. Fearing an alien invasion, he tried to convince the public that the Sorolans were not what they appeared to be. But this endeavor met with little success. Frustrated, exasperated, and on the verge of insanity, Sinclair formulated a plan to make Earth a more difficult target for the Sorolans. On the day of the Sorolan ambassador's arrival, he sent each of his 3 robot minions back in time to change the course of history. The first he sent to create a nuclear scare that would prevent world unification and prolong the Cold War. The second was to destroy the Morimoto Mars colony and make it look like the work of an alien race. And the third Sinclair sent to kill Dr. Enrique Castillo, the individual who was most influential in convincing humanity of the benefits of joining the symbiotry. His backup plan, should his robots have failed, was to assassinate the Sorolan delegate. It was our good fortune that Agent 5 was on duty at the Temporal Security Annex that day. He detected the temporal distortions, stopped each of the androids, and then apprehended Sinclair himself. That fateful morning made a hero of Agent 5 and spawned the blockbuster holoflick, The Journeyman Project. Elliot Sinclair was put on trial and found guilty of all charges. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on Vega Thalon and hasn't been heard from since.
So you can see this is basically just a recap of the first game, and they used the footage from Journeyman Project Turbo, although because they probably just didn't have the footage ready from Pegasus Prime, but we know what the real footage looked like. But it does go to show that we had an Oppmann biochip recording what was happening on our suit, which makes sense, especially nowadays that with police body cams being so ubiquitous. You know, it makes perfect sense. But yeah, that's why I say Journeyman Project Turbo is the movie version, because as you can see in this universe, they did make a movie. And that's part of the reason why we have all the Journeyman Project collectibles. So, with all that out of the way, that is the lore dump. And it's actually shorter than I remembered. I remember there being a lot more links and articles and stuff, but I guess that was just overwhelming for child me. But obviously adult me can get through it a lot faster. Oh, we actually have a double ceiling. You see that? We're like, this is like, it almost looks like it's made out of a tree, and it's got like a ceiling coming out from that. But then obviously we have the real ceiling up there. That's kind of cool. But in any event, that concludes our lore dump. So just some thoughts to take away from here. What we've been able to find out just by getting the lay of the land and putting some pieces together, we know, or at least we suspect, that whoever set us up is another member of the Temporal Security Agency. They can't use our suit, so they have to be using their suit. So anyone we find out of place at the 4 time zones should be our culprit. Now, we don't have to worry about TSA interference, because they know we're in prison. They know where we are, and they aren't going to send anyone else to investigate these ripples. On top of finding evidence in our locker of historically insignificant but monetarily valuable objects, 4 objects from our research zones were also put up for sale at the Louvre, and a unknown bidder immediately made overvalued bids on them to secure their immediate purchase. And this bidder may have been working for an alien race. And with the given discussions involving potential symbiometry action on the existence of time travel technology, with people wanting to share or dismantle it, it can be inferred that someone in the TSA is working on behalf of an alien race to spread time travel technology, though for what purpose we do not know. So our suspect is probably a couple of the races were fishy. The Kryn, for example, there was that, I forget their name, but there's the race that like everyone's suspicious of, but they haven't done anything bad yet. Even the SAR, like to collect artifacts, so they could have been the buyer, but I don't think there's an ulterior motive there. They seem pretty chill, and they're all on board with us keeping our technology. So the Luxuni are trying to steal our technology, kind of by advocating that it be indirectly advocating that it be put into their care as an elder symbiometry race. So we've got kind of a good idea what the plot was and how we were framed. We know the reason this culprit, or we suspect the reason this culprit was able to evade detection, is because they used the same null time tunnel that Agent 5 used to travel to his historical research sites, and they used that same tunnel to evade detection that would have been registered as a separate jump. So that's why we suspect it's a member of the TSA, because they would have to know our missions and know our jump times. So it's a lot of lore, but if you really go through it and think about it, it really sets this game up well. So we basically already know what we're looking for. It's a good bet that those artifacts are are the source of the temporal ripples in each time zone. So it can be assumed that our job in each of them is going to be to locate that artifact. However, that will do it for today's episode. Actually, let's end off next to the replicator, because next time we'll replicate all the items we saw commercials for, because we're consumers in a consumerist society. And then we can go about clearing our name. So with that, thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for next time, and stay safe out there, and we'll see you then.